Hello everyone. In this session, we will understand how to create a registration form and a login form, both exactly at the same time. Okay, so let's create this. So I have this form 2 here. So let me create this UI first. So I drag and drop one label here, and then again I'll drop one text box, and then I will hold this control key and I drag this control and slide it to the down. I have two controls now. I'll change the text property of this label control and I will say this as username and password. Okay, so this is my registration form. Okay, so basically let me drag it here somehow and then let me write it as registration form. Okay, and let me also change some of the other properties such as this font, and let me increase the size of this label so that it looks clear. Now it looks clear somehow. Okay, now the thing is what I need a button. So I'll say button, and then I'll also change the property of this button from the button 1 to register. Okay, so username, password, register, and let me write a login form code here. So the same thing, let me just copy this and copy it and then paste it. So this is my another identity, and I will change the text property of this and I'll say this is my login form and the username, password, and change the register to login. Okay, now I will do one thing. First of all, we will write the registration code and then the login. So you see, for this registration, what exactly we need to do, I need to insert the code. So whatever the username and password user is going to be put inside this text box has to be saved or inserted into the database table. Okay, so let me create one table here, and that table name is TBL registration. So right click on your table and say add new table, and I'll say ID int, and I'll say username and password. Varchar, it has to be varchar2, and then right click, set primary key. All other things you already know, and if you don't know about it, you should visit my previous videos. Control save and say TBL, let me write it as user. That's my table name, and these are the columns that we had created: ID, username, and password. Okay, so next thing is go to the code part and we will write some code inside this click event. So I'll double click on this register and it will create one button click event, and inside this button click event we will write insert code for our for this project. So I will write what I'm gonna write. So the first thing is we need to import the namespace. So I'll say using system.data.sql client, and then in the next thing I need a connection string. So I can copy that connection string from my previous project. It is going to be the same thing. So I'll go to my form1.cs, I go to the code part, and I'll simply copy this SQL connection and I will paste it in my code section of the new project or the new form. Then I go to SQL command, cmd equals to new SQL command, and inside that, instead of writing select star, we will write the insert query. So the insert query is going to be something like this: insert into TBL user, and then values, not values, let me write it as user, and then I'll say f name, oh sorry, username and password, and then values, and then again write at the rate username and at the rate password, and then I'll say con. So this is going to be my SQL command. I hope this works. Okay, now go to the connection open. Now this is basically connected and disconnected architecture of edu.net. Why do we need to open a connection, and why do we need to close a connection? Because we are inserting some data inside a database, so that's why we need to open the connection. We need to open the connection, and again, if you are opening any connection of SQL, then we need to close that connection too, and that's why the open and close method here. So we are creating the connection.open, and after that we will write cmd.parameter.add with value. I'll say at the rate username, and then where this username is coming from, it is coming from text box 1.text. Now you understand this, what we had written here. First there is a connection string, and then the SQL command insert into table. This is my table here, and it says username password. This username and password is the exact same thing. This one, this is username and password. These are the columns. Values, these are the variable of the SQL command, username and password. These are completely blank right now. You understand this? Okay. Next we opening the connection of this SQL client, and then we are filling this empty variables. And where exactly we can fill the data is with this text box 1. Okay, people will going to write the data inside this text box, and that's why I had put it this text box 1.text. So the data is here, it's going to be loaded inside this username, and then it's going to be ultimately loaded inside the CMD, or vice versa. You can go, CMD is having the data, it is adding inside the username with the help of text box 1.text. Okay, so I'll again copy this for my text box 2.text for the password, and I'll say text box 2.text. all right. Okay, next thing is I'll say cmd.execute non-query. Insert, update, delete, all these three methods is having this execute non-query. To execute this query, we had written inside the SQL command. Okay, so I will say now, let me write this thing inside the if condition, integer I equals to cmd equals to execute non-query, and then if condition, and this if condition. So this execute non-query will give you only two values, that is going to be 0 or 1. If it is 0, then it is not saved inside the database. If it is 1, then the entry is saved inside the database. So I will write a code something like this. I'll say if I is not equals to 0, then that means it is 1. So I'll say message box dot show registered, or otherwise the same thing, just the message is going to be the different error. Okay, so let me run this and let's see what happens. Oh, it will run form 1. So to change the form 1 to form 2, I'll say I'll go to program.cs and I'll change from form 1 to form 2 here. and then I'll run it. So now it will run form 2, and I will say username is admin and password is 123, and I will click on this registration button, and it will say registered. That means the data is saved inside my database, and to verify this, I'll close this. It will close the debug, and then we'll go to our table, right click on that and say show table data. If there is an entry, then it means we successfully registered. See, admin and 123, we successfully registered our username and password. Now the next thing what we want, we need to verify this this username and password inside this login form, so that we can log in and we can enter into our account, into our dashboard, right? That's the thing that we want. So let's create the code for this login button or the login form. I'll double click on this login button, and what I gonna do, I'll pass the textbox1.text, or sorry, textbox3.text and textbox4.text to a variable. Okay, I'll assign that. So see, this is my textbox1, this is my textbox2, this is my textbox3, and this is my textbox4. And you can verify this by go to the text part. Oh, right now it is nothing. Okay, let me write it here so that I can, yeah, this is textbox3 and textbox4. No problem. Okay, so let me pass it to some string variable. So I'll say string user. It is for textbox3.text. Okay, so next thing is string pass. This is for password, and this is for textbox4.text. Next thing what we want, I want to say if condition. This is for if the textbox3 and textbox4, that means username and password text boxes are empty, then we need to pass want to show a message to the user that please fill up the details. I'll say if user equals to empty and password equals to null, then I'll show a message box and I'll say enter the details. Okay, and then in the else part we will write the query SQL command cmd equals to new SQL command. Oh, I'm so sorry, equals to new SQL command, and I'll write the SQL query here. Select star, or the star is not working. Come on, man. Yeah, select star from TBL. My table name is TBL user, where username equals to @username and password equals to @password. Let me write it as username 1 and password 1. So to distinguish between username and password from the above one. Okay, so I'll say con. Oh, I'm so sorry. I again need to globalize. I need to declare this SQL connection as global. So I'll cut it and I'll paste it inside this partial class. So now my SQL connection is completely global. I can pass this object SQL command con here. And the next thing is I'll open a connection again, con.open, and I'll say cmd.parameters.add with value, and I'll say @username. Come on, username is coming from user, and you know that user is coming from textbox3.text. So this is user, and user is nothing but textbox3.text. Hope you understand it. Then I go to the next part for the password 1, and I'll say pass. So the next thing is we're going to use SQL Data Reader. And why I'm using SQL Data Reader is, you can see this username and password is basically the login credentials, right? And that need not to be updated, that need not to be changed by someone else. Okay, the integrity level of this credential has to be maintained, and that's why we need some data member that don't give the permission to change this username and password, and that can hold with this SQL data reader, because this has the property of read only and forward only. So it is going to read only from the database, and it forward the data from the database. Only read and forward it. Okay, it's not going to give the permission to change it. So that's why we are using SQL Data Reader. So instead of cmd.execute non-query, we are using here SQL Data Reader, and then I'll say cmd.execute reader. Okay. Now, by the way, in this form 2, where I had created the login form, instead of here, I had created another page, that is form 3, where I have created this login form. You can see, okay, that's exactly the same thing. I just, to clear the confusion, I had created one new form. Okay. Next thing is, just like that, with the cmd.execute non-query, we are creating if I is not equals to 0, we are writing here if rd, that is your SQL data reader dot read. If it has read it, then please show some message. Login successfully. This is my first method. If the data has been read from the database and their username and password are same from the database, then it prints the login successful. Otherwise, I need to print invalid details, or please enter the login credentials correct. And I will say here invalid details. Awesome. I'll close the connection here, con dot close. Okay, so now when I run this, you see here my username and password are, let me show with show table data, and I have this admin here, and I have this 123. So I will say my username is admin and my password is 123, and when I say log in, it will give you the message as login successfully. Okay, so I press OK here, and I'll say let me write as admin and 1, and let me write 1234, and when I press this login button, you will see invalid detail. So this registration form and login form works in a very precise manner, and it shows you the message boxes and every other thing. It works exactly the registration and login form works. Okay, so I hope you understand the registration and the login form. And one more thing we can do, so we have written here login successfully and invalid detail. So instead of login successfully, what you can do, you can also open a new form from here. So not just only the login successfully, here below this line you can do something like this. If you have a new form, so form 4 is going to be the new form, so you can write form 4 here, and then f4 f4 equals to new form 4, and then you can write something like f4 dot show, and this will going to open the new form where the user dashboard is going to be open. Okay, so I hope you understand it, that how exactly we can work with registration in the login form. Thank you so much for listening to me.